Why hello there, welcome to Advanced Tea Farming with your boy, TeaGuyTom. This video is for those who've watched Intro to Tea Farming and said to themselves, more, Tom, more. And that's just what we're going to give you in this video. We'll be covering genetics, crossbreeding, managing water and electricity, and a general overview on the building blocks of when designing a tea farm. But before we jump into that, let me cover TeaGuyTom's tea farm philosophy, or TTFP for short. To me, it's not how godly your clones are or how elaborate your farm system is. It's all about getting the most teas for as little work as possible. So try not to stress the details. I mean, if you're making teas, you're doing fine. Alright, cool. Genetics. It feels complicated, but honestly, it's not too bad. You'll get through it. This is a plant. There's a bunch of these in the game, but I like the berries. Plants go through 8 stages, starting with seed and seedling. The only action here is to look at the genes and then decide whether you want to keep them or not. If you're not vibing with your plant, just give it the old bone knife one too. So the stage after that is called sapling, which this is the first opportunity you have to clone your plant, which, let me explain that a little bit more. When you hold E on a plant, you could either eat it, clone it, or harvest it. Now, I'm going to skip eating because you should know better. With harvesting, you could either harvest an individual plant, or you can harvest the entire planter in one go. And with cloning, imagine you have a plant that you're just vibing with, and you want to keep it. Cloning lets you duplicate it a few times, and then replant them for another round. Then after that, you can do a nice clone all, and now you have even more. So if you continue this process of planting those clones, and then waiting for them to grow to sapling, then cloning them again, before you know it, you'll have enough clones to last you the entire wipe. After sapling comes crossbreeding. This is the stage where any other plant touching your plant can change its genes, for better or for worse. You can use crossbreeding to improve your plant's genetics, but we'll cover that in a second. So the next stage is mature and fruiting. So mature, you can skip, but fruiting is when you find out how many berries you're going to get from your plant. It starts at 1 and can go all the way up to 6 depending on the genes and the condition of the plant. Now you can harvest during this, but I suggest you waiting to the next stage. Brew some tea, try to relax. Then nearly the last stage is ripe. The second this stage hits, you can harvest. You won't be getting any more berries after this. And I hate to be a bummer, but if you don't pick your plant within 8 hours, you will hit the final stage, which is dying. Alright, you made it through the stages. Now it's time to talk about the weird letters that are on the plant. So the 5 gene types available for each slot are G, which makes the plant grow faster, Y, which gives you more berries, H, which withstands the cold better, W, which requires more water, that's a problem, and X, which does nothing, just a whole lot of nothing. When you plant a seed, you get 6 slots, which is a really hard sentence to say. How genes are picked on each slot is not entirely random. The odds of hitting are different per slot, so if you do get a G or a Y on slots 1, 4, or 6, it might be a bit more rare than you think. Alright, let's start with the X gene. The X doesn't do anything, but we're going to use this as a baseline so you understand how bad it can get. So the worst plant in the game with constant water and lighting takes 2 hours and 25 minutes to ripen. This will generate a whopping 2 berries. Which brings us to G, or growth. Every G on your plant reduces how long it takes to grow. With 1 G, you'll shave off 20 minutes. And with 6 Gs, you can shave off an hour and 20 minutes. It's not a linear thing, it's more like the first 3 do more than the last 3, but you get it. G make plant grow fast. Alright, let's do the letter Y, which stands for yield. 1 Y gives you an extra berry per plant, but 6 Ys gives you only 5 extra berries. Like I said, it's not a linear thing, you're going to get less and less the more Ys you add, but the sweet spot seems to be around 3. It's also worth noting that the amount of Ys you have also changes how many clones you get back. Just keep that in mind. Alright, H. This is the winter gene. So as far as I can tell, the only real benefit from this is that it grows faster inside a winter biome. I'm fairly certain this could be achieved with 1 heater, but you know, live your life. You're playing the game, you want to do this, have some fun. And then the last gene is W, which is water consumption. So if you have a plant with 6 W's on it, it's going to drink 7 milliliters of water every minute. So if you're really trying to stretch out your water consumption, this might come and bite you in the butt, but typically you'll be fine. Whew, that was fun. Alright, so in order for us to finish off genetics, we have to talk about conditions. So on every plant, there's a ground and there's a water. Alright, let me try to break down water for you. let's put down a planter box. A planter box can hold 9,000 milliliters of water. Alright, so let's throw 5,000 milliliters of water on top. And let's plant a berry. What you'll notice is the water property is at 100%. And that's because in order for you to achieve 100%, you have to keep your planter box either between 4,000 and 7,000 milliliters of water. Alright, so let's top this guy off. What you'll notice now is that the water level dropped down to 75. Keeping your plant at 75% versus 100% turns out to not have any impact on the plant whatsoever. It's not until it's paired with the next condition that it actually has any impact. The ground condition is influenced by fertilizer, and in order for you to find fertilizer, you're going to have to befriend a horse. By taking the horse poop and putting it into the composter, it makes fertilizer. Now walking over to your planter box and hitting E, you can drag in fertilizer. Again, weirdly enough, fertilizer by itself does nothing to the plant, doesn't change the speed or the yield. But paired together, your overall status becomes 100%, and you can achieve things like the rare and coveted 6-berry plant. Or even better yet, the fastest growing plant in the game, the old 50-minute berry bush. So you probably think, Tom, you go through all this effort setting up all this complex rigmarole so you can have the perfect tea farm, and you'd be wrong. I run my sprinklers non-stop, don't use fertilizer, and I've made plenty of teas with 2 Y's and 2 G's. Remember, it's about that TTFP. Which brings us to our next subject, crossbreeding. What feels like it's complicated but kind of just boils down to basic math and gambling. People always treat crossbreeding like it's this way to slice in an extra gene where you want it, when in reality, you can't crossbreed unless you get the genes that you need. And in order to get the genes you need, you gotta plant a lot of plants and keep your clones. You want to look for anything with more than 2 Y's and 2 G's, especially if they have something on slots 1, 4, and 6, since they're so rare. Alright, let me try to explain what happens during crossbreeding. So say you wanted to get rid of these 2 X's in this plant, and you had this gene and this gene to do it with. Well, we can overwrite those X's using the crossbreeding process. We'll start by taking the plant with the X's and planting it right in the center of the planter. This will be considered our base plant. Now we wait for that plant to get to sapling. It should take about 15 minutes. Once your base plant hits sapling, you're going to take the 2 clones you're going to use to crossbreed and place them right next to your base plant. We do this because we don't want our new genes to crossbreed before our base plant. So what happens when your base plant hits crossbreeding is it will reach out to any similar berry plant and calculate its new genes. So how the calculations work is that you start with your base plant and you add your genes in. And from there it's simple math. You count the genes and the most win. But with one little caveat. Green is worth 0.6 and red is worth 1. Alright, and also when there is no clear winner, the base plant is the default. So if we apply the same logic to the rest of the slots, this is what our final gene is going to look like. Hey, success, we can do basic math. Now I'm not doing these calculations in my head. I'm a pretty huge advocate of the SIGPOG methodology of jumping over to rustbreeder.com, plugging in my genes, calculating, setting it to 3 Y's and 3 G's, and then following the instructions. Putting that all together, you'll have a god clone in no time, but honestly, it's not that big of a deal. It's kind of, overblown, in my opinion. But what do I know? Alright, let's jump into water and electricity. Definitely not a complicated subject at all. Alright, let's start with the sprinkler. Sprinklers generate 15 milliliters of water statically. And that 15 gets divided by how many planters it's touching. So one planter would get the full 15 milliliters. 2 planters would get 7 with a 1 loss. 3 planters gets 5 each with a 0 loss. And with 4 planters, it costs 3 each with a whopping 3 loss. So it's obvious, you're supposed to use 3 planters because it saves the most water. Bickety bam, let's call it a day. But before we do that, let's see if plants can survive on 3 milliliters of water. Yeah, let's get weird, let's give it a shot. So it turns out that even with generic genes, the berries survive perfectly fine with 3 milliliters of water. Same goes for pumpkins. And even more shocking, it also works for hemp. I will say that with one caveat, that if you do have bad genes, you're going to have to prime your boxes to make sure that your hemp keeps growing, but it can work. So So remember, I play for the TTFP. It's all about more berries from less resources. And with that said, we could do something about that remaining 3 milliliters of water. Like power 5 planters with 3 milliliters of water each. Now this creates possibly the most efficient way to create a tea farm in the game. So for instance, you could power a 2-floor 2x5 with 4 sprinklers by placing a sprinkler here and here. So this is the absolute max you're going to get from a pump and 4 sprinklers. I mean, you're going to hit 20 planter boxes. That's a lot of berries. Classic TeaGuyTom 5 planter methodology. But let's talk about the pumps. You know, that thing you put in the water that pumps? I don't know. You get it. One freshwater pump can power up to 4 sprinklers continuously without sputtering or stopping. Also, sprinklers work off of gravity, so when you start your first sprinkler, always go top down. When you're on an ocean, you have to use a water purifier, and unfortunately, this takes your sprinkler count from 4 to 2. If you use any more than that, your purifier will run out of fresh water. Yeah, the ocean's tough, but the best way to scale an ocean base is to use 3 pumps to a fluid combiner, and then that combiner into a purifier. With that, you can power up to 6 sprinklers continuously. Not too bad. Speaking of powering, let's start talking about electricity. There's 3 ways to get power in your base. You got windmills, solar panels, and generators. And you can store that power in your base using either a small, medium, or large battery. So I'm going to ignore generators and small batteries because we're gamers and we're going to swing for the fences in this video. So the most ideal way to set up a medium battery is to use 3 solar panels all facing directly to north. From there we want to grab 2 root combiners, connect our first solar panel all the way over here and plug it in the left side of the first root combiner. Then grab the second one and plug it into the right side of the first root combiner. Then we'll take those both and loop them around to the bottom of the second root combiner. And then we'll grab the last one and plug it into the right side of the root combiner. Beautiful. Alright, so now that our power is all root combined, we're going to take it over to our battery. Alright, so now with this setup, you can rely on getting about 35 watts of power pretty consistently. And don't be fooled by what Russ says. This 50 is a misnomer. It won't work if you use all 50 watts. But before we talk about how we're going to use those 35 watts, we got to talk about the ceiling light. Every ceiling light costs 2 power. And you can daisy chain ceiling lights using the pass-through from one to the next. Every planter box has to be touched by the ceiling light or the plants will die. And the most you can power are 4 planter boxes. Alright, so now we have water and electricity. We covered all the bases. Now let's put them all together and see what we got. Alright, so powering out of the medium battery, we're going to come over to a branch. And we're going to throw an extra one on the wall for the time being. How branches work is that it takes the amount of power that you set it to, which is going to be 5, and sends the rest of power out to the next branch. So we take the full amount of power that remains and we slide it to the next branch and plug it in there. You tell the branch how much power you want by hitting E on it and changing the number to, well, 5. We're going to change it to 5. The reason we're setting it to 5 is because our water pumps require 5 in order for them to operate, and we don't want to waste any electricity. Come on, global warming and such. Be conscious. We'll come back to our other branch, run another line from the branch out, take it all the way over here to our other pump, and then bam. Oh, it didn't work. I wonder what's going on. I forgot to change this branch to 5 power. Don't forget, it requires 5 power to operate, so there you go. Hey, it's working again. Eureka. Now that the pumps are working, we're going to use the power out on the second branch to control all of the lights in the base. Boom, there you go. Every one of them lit up. Then let's connect our pumps to our sprinklers. And there we go, every planter is getting 3 milliliters of water. Now if you're in a hurry, you're going to want to jump in the water with your water jug and get your splash on so you can prime your planters, but you're ready. So this is what I call a medium circuit. This is the max capacity of a medium battery. So the battery is your hard limit, and in order for you to continue your farm, you need to duplicate this whole circuit over again. I'll touch more on this modular concept in a minute, but let's stop messing with this medium nonsense and let's get into the large battery circuit. Come on. How do you expect to fight with the wolves if you spend all day sparring with the puppies? Similar to the medium battery, the large battery has a consistent number of around 70 that you should try not to go past, or your lights will flicker. Now, the large circuit doesn't use solar panels or root combiners. It uses one windmill. So the windmill's input can range from 70 to 130 depending on Alistair's mood for the day. In order to have a fully operational large circuit, you have to put your windmill at least 7 blocks tall. Now with a large circuit, you can consistently light and water up to 80 planters, just by placing your sprinklers and lights in the right place and connecting them to 4 pumps. Once you're done with 80, to expand to 160, all you gotta do is add another windmill and large battery, and 4 more pumps. If you feel a little lost when doing electricity, just do your best. It can get a little complicated. Just try not to beat yourself up. We're not splitting atoms over here. Come on, we're making teas in a video game. Lighten up. Alright, let's talk about putting these circuits to use. Let's go over a little bit of a tea farm design. Why not? Let's get weird. Since the lights and the sprinklers have to be placed in a very specific position for them to be efficient, this kind of creates 3 different sets of modules you can use to design your tea farm with. So the first module is a 2x2. Pretty common. We start by placing the light dead center in the middle of the room. Then grab your sprinkler and shifty it over onto the side. Once it has power and electricity, this is what it should look like. With a large circuit, you could power 16 of these before you have to set up a whole new large circuit. Next up is the 2x4. With this one, we'll be placing down 2 lights, and we're going to try to find the center of all 4 planters on one side and the center on the other side and slam it right there. For the sprinklers, we're going to push them to the back side of the wall. This will assure that they only touch 4 planters, making sure that we only provide 3 milliliters of water per planter. Alright, now our final module, the 4x4. Now, this is a big one, so pay attention. Similar to the other 2, we're going to slam the light right between all 4 planters in each corner. Voila, you nailed it. Now we do the sprinklers a little different. This time we're going to put it smack dab in the middle of each corner. So now to double check to make sure that you set this thing up correctly, you want to go to the middle planters and make sure that they're getting 3 milliliters of water every 10 seconds. Like I mentioned with the other 2 modules, you can get away with 4 of these before you need another large battery and another windmill. So now that you understand the large circuit module system, I use this to design bases all the time, and I suggest you give it a shot yourself and see what kind of creative ideas you come up with. It's a good time. So if you got anything from this video, please subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. It really helps the channel grow and lets me make more tea content. Like the base design here called Frank and the time I became a tea lord. GG's, one love. Tea is life.